So the first thing I think we need to do would be to cut back on our standardized tests. We've cut back on the end of the year exams over the past few years, but I don't think it's enough because in my district and many other districts we now give benchmark tests every 6 weeks. These tests cause undue stress on the students and it takes away 6 days worth of instruction time. It also causes our counselors to spend time preparing for these tests instead of spending it with our students. In our current climate of school violence and mental health issues, I think our counselors need to be spending more time with our students and not less time. The second thing I think we should do would be to expand our STEM programs. We've gotten a lot of kids excited in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think we can go a step further. Those corporations and the industries that are getting tax breaks, like our wind, oil, and gas industries, let's have them come in as part of their tax breaks and partner with schools and show these students what they're learning in the classroom and how that can translate into careers out in the field and get them excited about those careers. Thank you.
I believe that obviously funding is incredibly important for schools, but just as important is the status of the children. The family needs to be protected. The family needs to be taken care of. If the child goes home to a home that's struggling, parents that are having trouble paying bills, no health care, food on the table when they're able to, there's no success there. Children feel that stress, they bring it to school, they fail because of it. If we can't take care of the entire family, it doesn't matter if we fund schools adequately. No matter what, they're going to struggle. Equally important, funding is a big deal, but it doesn't instantly correct problems. If teachers don't want to be here because the funding has been historically terrible, we need to lure them back. We need to have an actual reason they want to be here to help our students and to help our families and eventually cause our state to have a cascade upward. If we can have successful students, we can have successful adults. And those adults can improve our entire state.
I think legislatures don't need to be able to vote themselves raises anymore. I think we need to move beyond the walls of the School for Learning, have internships, have jobbing out. I know a lot of my students miss school, we have chronic absenteeism, and I think if we had more jobbing out opportunities, that would diminish. Jenks has a wonderful living, like assisted living program with residents that read to children, and so it's intergenerational. So there's community partnerships. School-approved vendors are expensive, so when I buy supplies, if I go to Dick Blick, I have to pay $12 for a paintbrush. Why can't I buy my supplies from Amazon or from Walmart? So just more options to shop around. 20% of schools have gone to a 4-day week, and I'm really not a fan of that. I like the idea of shortening school days as a whole. Research has shown, especially with high schoolers, if they get a little bit of a later start in the day, then they're more successful. And also, I think if we are taking a day away, then you have students that will miss out on breakfast and lunch.
I want to first say thank you to the PLAC for organizing this, but more importantly for inviting me. Most of the time these events are really restricted to just the Democratic and Republican parties. So for me to get an invite, it was a really honor, and thank you.
I appreciate it. Really.
My plan is pretty simple. It's just to let teachers teach. It's not too complicated. I'm a licensed therapist, so I went to school, I got the degrees, I got the experience, I took the tests, and I got my paper from the state that lets me be a therapist. People don't legislate what I have to do in therapy. They don't legislate what topics we have to talk about or when we have to talk about them. They just trust me to be a therapist. So why can't we let our teachers be the same way? They do the same things. They go to school, they get the degrees, they pass the tests, they get the piece of paper. Let's trust them to teach. They know, I'm assuming, if they're licensed to teach 5th grade math, they know what to teach and when to teach it so that kiddo can pass 5th grade math. Let's unlock the passion, the creativity, and the professionalism that I think each teacher walks into their classroom that first day. Let's unlock that and let them have the liberty to teach the way they were trained to.
I've done a lot of thinking about this, and it seems that respect is kind of at the center of it. I tend to generally look at things and see what may be causing them and try to fall back to a source, a root cause of what's going on here. I think the simplest answer is usually the one that's staring you in the face. And why not, let's look at what would create a better environment for teachers. Because when teachers thrive, children thrive. When teachers are comfortable and are non-restricted and have the tools that they need to teach their classrooms, children learn. No teacher that I have ever met has said that they became a teacher for the money or for the power or for the job title or any of that. It's to teach children. I think that's what's central to all of it. I think that we need to foster an environment that is more welcoming to parents and community. And I think that that support that we as a community can give to our schools and our teachers will ultimately improve student outcomes and reduce costs that are restricting our teachers in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And I'd like to echo everyone so far and thank the PLACs for having us tonight. As you all know, student success is a tripod. It takes motivated teachers, it takes motivated students, and it takes involved, motivated, caring parents. So thank you all for having us and for having such an interest. So as I think about issues beyond just the budget, which, as we know, that's kind of issue one. Budgets make us run. I come back to a couple of things that I would like to see us address. Namely, first of all, I was speaking with the director of the Office of Management and Enterprise Services recently, and he said that so far, school districts are missing an opportunity to take advantage of group buying that the state has. I would like to explore that, see if there are ways that we could possibly save schools money on the things that we all buy, things like light bulbs and toilet paper. Beyond that, I would like to see us continue to refine the teacher evaluation system. The TLE is a start, but as several of us up here can tell you, that it's just a start. There's still some refinement that can be done. There have been proposals for things like expanding upon certifications to create master level teachers. I think that's a great incentive and a great starting point. Got my signal there.
That was your 30-second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Beyond that, I'd like to see us use state law to further codify elements that are in IDEA so that we're more fully serving all of our students. If you read through the state constitution, Article 3 promises every student an education. It doesn't promise just students who have these abilities. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, just to echo the comments, thank you to the PLAC for having all of us. Obviously, this is a good sign for Oklahoma. When you have this many candidates engaged, I think it sends a pretty loud and clear message to the State House that we need solutions. I love this question, by the way, because so many times teachers in the media coverage that we see, it's all about the money, right? It's all about the paycheck. Here's a perfect example. Our first question that we get that our priorities are in the right place, and that is, what can we do to better educate our kids? It's absolutely not about the money. So when I look at education, Kyle hit the nail on the head. We've got to let our teachers teach. And we're seeing this not only in education, we're seeing it in healthcare. I mean, think about your doctor's office visit now. You know, when I was a kid 30 years ago, we'd go to the doctor's office, you had one doctor, one nurse, and one office person. You go now, you have one doctor, probably 4 or 5 nurses, and about 20 people in the office doing paperwork. So I think from a cost saving standpoint and from an outcome standpoint, we've got to let our teachers teach. We've got to free the administrative burden that they have upon them. They spend most of their class time filling out papers, folks. And you tell me if they couldn't have that 30 minutes to teach that child, how much better we would be, how much better educated they would be. I think 40% of the kids going to college right now have to take remedial math and English. Cost their families $20 million a year. So definitely some challenges, but I think we can fix them. Thank you.
Well, I echo a few of the statements I heard earlier. Let me teach is a big thing. Let's, stop the micromanagement and let us teach. The funding is a big problem. We need to get that going. I think we're on the right track with trying to hold our teachers here and get the funding on the right track. I also have a few other issues like the health care, mental health, and preventative health care should not be a luxury. It should be available to all Oklahomans. And also for the citizens that are struggling with drug abuse, I think we should reform them and not incarcerate them.
I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm really excited to be here and a little nervous. But I do want to say that first of all, coming from the classroom, I think we really need to work on class sizes. That is a huge impact on the teacher and on the students. Fewer students make the biggest difference in the classroom as far as the one-on-one attention, differentiation. So I have always said I would rather have a smaller class size than more money because I can do my job better that way. So that's the first thing I would work on. The second thing is testing. When my children got back from the walkout, my 5th grader and my 8th grader had 2 weeks of testing. We have done a great job, as stated before. Joy Hoffmeister has done a good job in having our juniors take the ACT as their EOY. Is a phenomenal idea, and I appreciate that, but there's still work that needs to be done because there is a lot of testing, and that's a burden not only on students but on teachers. And finally, I want to work on teaching, getting more money for the younger grades because we start RSA funding in 3rd grade and it needs to start in 2nd and 1st. So that's it. Thank you.
I will say just up front, yes, I do support the idea of school consolidation. It just makes sense. Why do we have so much money going to administration when we're struggling just to teach the children? That's missed opportunities. But it's just a drop in the bucket in terms of our actual problems with funding schools. It's a great idea, but when we have 425 independent school districts, at least 96 of those with less than 200 students, yeah, that's absurd to spend all this money on individual superintendents, individual everything for each school. But that's only going to change our entire funding by 2 or 3% at best. It's a waste of our time to worry about that first. We need to be focusing on improving the school outcome, then we can worry about the administrative outcomes. It seems almost like a distraction at this point, but I do support it. I just think we have other things we need to worry about right now.
Well, right now, I don't think Oklahoma is ready for consolidating our districts because there was a hearing during the school walkout and it was shut down like 11-1. But I'm open to it, and I think we need to do some more research. I know other states have done it and they are ranked higher than we are, so I think it's something to look into. But what I think we can do right now is put a cap on those really high-paid administrators. Some administrators, I mean, they're one person and they make what 7 or 8 teachers could make. So if we were to cap them, we could put more teachers in classrooms, and then maybe we could have a robotics program where there isn't one, or a home ec, or wood shop. So I think they're just people like we are, so I really don't understand why they're paid such a high salary, and I think we need to cap that so that way we can have more teachers in our classroom. So kind of like what you were saying, so that way we can have smaller class sizes, because I think that is really, really important.
I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm kind of indifferent to school district consolidation because I think it's just another way to talk about money instead of something that can actually help kids progress in education. Why can't we just let parents pick where they want to send their kids to school? I'm not talking about vouchers or school choice as it's been, framed so many times in the past. I'm talking about just a simple going from one public school to another, even if it's at a district. The arguments you're going to hear against this will go back to money. They won't talk about if that kid can actually benefit or not. And again, I'm coming from a therapist perspective. If I'm working with a client and they have an issue that I am not trained to, or I know that someone else across town is better at it, I have an ethical and moral obligation to help that client go to that other therapist. And I can imagine if a teacher is working with a kiddo and they know a teacher across town or perhaps even across the hall that could help this kid better, why can't they help that parent make that choice to get that kid over there? So let's empower parents to make informed decisions with a qualified professional to use their liberty to get their kid the education that they need.
Well, consolidation is such a dirty word. A lot of people are very terrified of it. Coming from West Tulsa, we just had 3 of our elementary schools consolidated and moved into our middle school, and then our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders moved into our high school. This closed down 3 of our beloved, unique, historic community schools that most of our area had grown up in and sent their children and their children to. So it was a very tough thing for us. Now, as far as district consolidation, I think that it would be very efficient to combine administrative costs throughout these smaller districts. I think that the roadblock that we hit is that the large districts have different problems than the smaller districts. And when we go and we attack each of those individually and discuss what's best for the areas, I think that we all come out winners in that. I also would have to disagree with Kyle. You know, it may not be much, but as a mom, you know, I pinch pennies. I do. I know a lot of moms that do. And I've been in some pretty tough situations before in my life. And if my child needed diapers and I didn't have the money to go to the store to get them, I would go look under the couch cushions and I might find $2 there. But I wouldn't stop and say, well, I guess we don't have any diapers. I would go and continue looking, and I think if we keep looking, we'll find a lot more than we think.
When it comes to the topic of school district consolidation, I come down as a no. I do not support the idea of consolidating districts, and like Kyle said, it does come down to money. It comes down to about 3% of the total amount spent per student in the state of Oklahoma. According to data from the U.S. Census Department, even if we took every single dime out of what we spend on administration, if we completely liquidated that and put that directly into instruction, which currently is about 2/3 of our dollars spent on students, even if we did that, it would not move the needle in terms of where Oklahoma ranks per student in spending. Beyond that, I think that if we get into the matter of trying to decide how to consolidate districts, we're opening a can of worms. When you look at how consolidation has performed nationwide, it hasn't been an unequivocal success. For example, the state of Florida attempted to consolidate, and the end result was actually an increase in administrative costs as opposed to a decrease. So until I can see data that's going to show that it will have a long-lasting benefit for our students, I can't support it.
I don't know how many people know it, but Jenks is what you call a donor district. That means 30% of the ad valorem, the local taxpayer dollars, goes to the state to fund other districts. Personally, I think that's too much to ask of our local taxpayers. And I think they shouldn't at least be able to take more than 20%. And if there's any districts where over 50% of their funding comes from the state, I think they need to be put on a list for consolidation, and they have a 5-year plan to either, one, increase the local funding flexibility for them to pay their 50% or their fair share of their school district. Because here's the problem. In a small town, I grew up in a small town, I graduated with 35 in my senior class. That's everything. That's the community, those schools. They've seen the towns that the school went away, so did the town. They're ghost towns. So they are not going to give up their districts. We have 500 districts in the state. Texas has 39 people, or 39 million people. Oklahoma has 3.9. We have more school districts than the state of Texas. It doesn't make sense, but we have to have a plan that sustains those local communities, sustains their identity. We can do countywide administration. I think there's a lot of opportunity for change, especially with this group coming in. So, thank you.
I don't agree with the consolidation. I am a part of the consolidation in West Tulsa, and it's like you're putting 3 families together This would be combining a lot more, making the ghost towns like, I'm sorry, your name? Lonnie said. I also came from a small school. I graduated with the class of 57, and bringing the three communities together, it's one community in West Tulsa, but bringing them all three together, we've had lots of problems with family. Each school was their own family, and they are not meshing very well. It's gotten better through the year, but it's just not been well all the time. So I am not for that.
One of the biggest frustrations while I was at the Capitol was how it was discussed, and they said repeatedly that over 50% of our budget is on education. And so my frustration is if over 50% of our budget is on education, then why are we spending more time on it? A lot of my budget is spent on soccer, and I'm at the soccer fields all the time. So I am for district consolidation if it is done in a responsible manner, which means it needs to be researched, it needs to be focused on, and it should be a priority. I am not for school or building consolidation, which, as what we've heard, is very hurtful to towns or small schools. I am for superintendents, and Representative Teague's bill that she did come up with during the walkout discussed how a superintendent is responsible for more than one. So we're talking about consolidating districts, but not school or buildings. So again, I think it needs to be a priority. We need to look at that.
That's okay. I am not opposed to school consolidation if it is done responsibly. The one plan that I have heard is to make every county a district and have one superintendent for that county. I am against that plan because I think Tulsa County is too large for that to be a feasible option. However, if you look at the OSSAA average daily membership numbers for this school year, there are 261 high schools with 200 students or less. Some of those are small private schools, so just for argument's sake, let's just say there's 200 public schools. That's 200 superintendents, 200 principals, 200 secretaries, etc. That's a lot of money being spent on admin costs. I do understand that in some of these smaller schools, that's the only thing the community has to hold on to. So we need to look at each one on a case-by-case basis, because I don't want to take away the communities and have the ghost towns like we've heard. I am in favor of looking to see if we can combine some of those admin costs with nearby districts. So the schools can stay open, they can have their own identity, however they're going to share a superintendent, they're going to share transportation costs, janitorial costs, things like that. That will allow for some of that money to flow back into the classroom while allowing those communities and those schools to maintain their identity.
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is have an audit of the districts and of the legislature. I think maybe money hasn't been taken by individuals, but I think that some of these politicians have diverted funds other places. So I'm absolutely for funding schools, and I think that first we just need to know where has the money been going. And I think we need transparency, because everywhere that I've looked online to try to figure out like this formula for how we fund schools, it is so convoluted and so confusing. So I think first we need transparency, we need an audit, and then I think it's hard for me because I feel like, why would an Oklahoman sign this petition to like undo the teacher raises that we just got? Like, why? But I think it's because of the distrust, and I think there's resentment with our government. And I think that if the government had some accountability and some transparency, I think we'd be surprised, because I think that the people signing the petition would come around. And you know, I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about everyday Oklahomans. I think if we had transparency, I think we could have some trust again, and we could move forward.
My public position is, if I didn't get a cost of living increase for the last 10 years, I don't think I'd have that job, and I don't know many people who would, which is why we're probably seeing so many teachers leave the state. So I am 100% for a teacher pay raise, but I cannot support taxes based on the morality of it. I just can't. Anytime someone takes something from someone else, that's called stealing. So why do we give the government a pass when they do it? Time and time again, Oklahoma City has told us that they don't really care what we think or how we vote. When we passed State Question 780 and 781, they tried to essentially repeal it. Year after year, they play a shell game with funding at nearly every single state level department. So what makes us think that when we pass this referendum, it's actually going to do something? Here's the thing. Our local school boards don't have to wait for Oklahoma City to solve our problems. They have the capability and the liberty to go ahead and increase student or teacher pay raises regardless of what Oklahoma City decides. So let's support our local school districts to elevate teacher pay raise and not care or wait for Oklahoma City to solve our problems.
I know there's been a lot of fear, and I felt that same fear last year when I started this journey. It's been very, very interesting to see all the teachers kind of rise up and start where I started. I found that, you know, when I was lobbying for education at the Capitol, I was told so many times that, you know, there's bills in the works that just haven't come into, you know, working yet. We have fixed a lot of things, but it just hasn't happened yet. It's a large ship. It takes some time to move it. And it's easy to get caught up in fear and the sky is falling. I mean, I know I did for a brief amount of time. And then I realized that it takes the same amount of energy to be afraid and to fight against as it does to stand up and start actively trying to follow the pointing finger to every place that it went and hold everybody accountable. And then the magical thing happened. I realized that I was just as much to fault at this as anybody else in this state, because I didn't go and do what I needed to do to make sure that my kids got what they needed. I don't support raising taxes if we have other viable funding sources. I've seen our state treasurer says that our funding, our revenue projections for next year are up twice as much as that tax package. And I would like to see us be more efficient.
I'd like to start by taking an unequivocal stand that I am against the initiative to repeal this, and I personally find it offensive that Dr. Coburn chose to say that that he knows how easy it is to raise taxes. Dr. Coburn has never ever once held office on the state level in the state of Oklahoma. While things might be done in Washington one way, in Oklahoma we had a constitutional amendment passed back in the 90s that creates a need for a supermajority to raise any kind of taxes. The fact that anything was accomplished at all this spring is impressive. Representative, thank you for that. That said, beyond that, in recent years, for anyone who's paid attention to the news, you know we've had to go into special session in order to get a budget passed. We went into the end of this session with a budget that is funded. If this passes, it totally blows a hole in that budget. And let's be honest, it is law that teachers are going to get the raise. That said, if this passes and those taxes go away, that money has to come from somewhere. It's going to come from other agencies. I may not think that what passed was the greatest thing in the world, but we've got a budget that's funded, and if we're going to make changes, we need to make those changes going forward, not by blowing a hole in what we've got.
Trust. I mean, that's what we lost at the state level, is there's not trust in our state legislators to solve the problem. In Jenks, we have a great school district. People happily and overwhelmingly support our bond issues by 70%. Why do they do that? Because they trust our educators, they trust our administrators, that they're going to take that money and get the biggest bang for their buck. And they deliver on it. And whenever I'm in the community and people ask me, why do we pay the highest millage in the state? I say, because you get one heck of an investment for your education dollar. That's the problem at the state level. People, I don't think, have a problem paying taxes. What they have a problem is when those taxes are misspent, when they're misappropriated, when they disappear. Then you have people that run out with a petition that say, you know what, until I can trust you to spend my money wisely, I'm not giving you another dime. And so that's what we need back in our state government, is the trust that we're actually going to solve problems. I think the community leaders came together, the civic leaders, the business leaders, the educators. They came up with a plan called Step Up. The legislators had a great opportunity to pass that, and they didn't. And after 3-4 years of saying, hey, we're going to fix it next year, the educators said enough's enough. And that's why you had them at the state capitol. That's why you have the opportunity that we have as candidates when we get up there to actually make some change, because you really sent a message to the State House.
Okay, I also am offended at Dr. Coburn trying to blow the bottom out of this. That is why no teacher wants to take funding from someplace else to give us a raise. That's not what we ever wanted. We marched there to take taxes for gross production tax, taxes that were given away earlier, and taxes that we need back now. And Dewey Bartlett spoke at the town hall meeting, and he said that he pays his 7% of the oil, and that he expects all the other people doing the same thing to bring back money back into Oklahoma. And no teacher wants to take money from state agencies, because that hurts our children, and that's who we're fighting for.
I do not support the petition. It made me really sad when I heard about it. It just breaks my heart, because I feel like we were on a great path, and now we're in a holding place, and there's just so many questions. Again, my frustration is I do believe that our state has money. If our legislation was still in session, I believe that there are bills that could have still been passed, that it would not matter whether or not this petition goes through, because there is extra money that can be used for a budget. And that is something that was frustrating when I was at the Capitol, when I was seeing that there was this money that's available, and there were a few that were blocking money for our state budget. And a reason why I felt like there needed to be a change. So I do not support the petition, and I do support finding ways to fund our state budget for education and all the other agencies of the state for all of Oklahomans.
I am against repealing the new taxes. Just the other day I was at the Tulsa County Republican headquarters, and they had the petition there and asked me to sign it, and I declined. I'm not going to do anything right now that is going to cause us to lose more great teachers to other states or other careers because they can make better money. When I am in office, I want to call for an audit of all state agencies. I want to see where we have need and where we have excess. I want to address that in our state budget. And then at that point, if we can cut taxes because we have an excess in our budget, let's do that. If we need to, hopefully not, but raise taxes, then we can look at that as well. All of the constituents that I've spoken to so far have told me they are not against paying their fair share of taxes, and even raising them if they need to, if they know their tax money is being spent responsibly. And when I'm in office, I have promised them that I will make sure their tax money is spent responsibly.
I'll be straightforward. I cannot possibly support overturning this at all. I was disappointed to even see it come up. How are we going to keep teachers here in our state if this is a threat over their head all of the time? We finally, after weeks and weeks of struggle and so much effort, got a little bit, just a little bit of improvement in the state. And immediately somebody was decrying it and trying to get it overturned and throw it all away. I'm all for improving. If they have a better idea, I'll hear it. We need some new idea before we try and burn the old idea. That's one of the inherent issues we've got right now, is we're not willing to put forward a new idea before we toss the old one. We can't simply just cut and cut and cut and then come back at a later date and say, all right, now what do we do? It's just a threat existentially to our entire education system if this is the sword over their head every day. There's no way we can overturn this until there's something better on the table. And I can't support it until somebody offers that.
Raise your hand. Okay. Does everybody see? All right.
I'm kind of against it. I think you'd actually find a lot of private schools probably don't want it because they know that with that money is going to come regulations and things they have to do and maybe they don't want to do. And so I think you're going to find a lot of private schools, especially homeschoolers, they don't want public dollars because they know there's going to be strings attached to it. So
I'm going to have to agree with you. I think that bringing the government into the private sector is a terrible idea most every time. Generally, in a free market, a company succeeds or it doesn't. And when we have government agencies, it works a little bit different. Anything that the government seems to be attached to, when we're not doing as well as we could be doing with it, we tend to throw more money at it and expect it to do better. I think that there are a lot of out-of-the-box innovative ideas and a lot of really smart Oklahomans that care a lot about education, that if we only came together and had the ability to open our minds to other people's ideas and to see where we can come together in the middle and make the best education for our kids, that we could find a really great system. I would encourage everybody to go look up the definition of public education. It isn't necessarily what we have now. It's an outline. And I think that there is more opportunity for Oklahoma to lead the nation in education. And I didn't raise my hand because I believe if we can get a great education for the smallest amount, that I would wear that proudly as a badge of honor.
I want to come out first and foremost and say I am against the use of public dollars for private schools. In one of my earlier answers, I mentioned the importance of IDEA. For anyone who's not familiar with that, that's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's been a long day and I have to remember my acronyms. It concerns me greatly that there's even the specter of the possibility that we might send public dollars to schools that frankly can discriminate who they allow in. Private schools have an admissions process. They can tell kids no. Public schools take everybody. We take every child and we all work our hardest to give those children exceptional educations. I don't think that it's fair to the taxpayers. I don't think it's fair to the students to say we're going to siphon off those needed dollars and send them to schools that can tell your child no, that can say you're not good enough for us.
I would say at this point in time, I can't even imagine interjecting school choice with the state of our public education. Can I foresee opportunities where you have a rural school district that has a special needs child that needs to travel to get somewhere else, to have that accommodation so they have a fair shot at education? You better believe it. There's opportunities out there. And if we can help those kids and those families, we should look at it. When it comes to private school versus public, my daughter's in Bishop Kelly. That's a choice we made. That's a choice her grandmother made, that she wanted her to have that education. That's our choice. That's our burden. I don't think the public dollars should go to pay for her education. As a matter of fact, I'm very happy that my tax dollars stay in Jenks to help fund the education here, because that's why we moved to this district, was to go to this school. But you know what? We had a very shy child. And we took her to Mother's Day out, and in that Christian-based education, they got to be prayer leaders, and it really pulled that out of her. So for her, that was the right fit. For another child, Jenks is the right fit. It was not that we were against this district, and I think anybody that will attest in my city service been extremely supportive of it, advocated for this district, for the STEM program, and I would say no, that public dollars should not go to private education. That's a choice we made as a family. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say no. I have some firsthand experience at a child that's in my class this year, and if he had been to another school, a private school perhaps, that he wouldn't have made it a day or two. And honestly, I was wondering myself the first day or two if he was going to make it in my classroom, but he has been successful. And the first few days of school, he didn't even want to talk to anyone or play with anyone. And the last few days we've been on the playground and he's been calling out kids' names and playing. And but he had some issues, and I don't think that he would have been able to make it. And so therefore, I think the public dollars should go to public school.
I think there is a need for private schools, public schools, home schools, online schools. Each child needs their special education. I do not agree with public money going to private schools because I think no matter what, there will be a discrimination. Even if you do give them some money, there's going to be families that still cannot afford private education. And that is why I struggle with any money going to the private schools. I have nothing against private schools. I know so many kids thrive on it. And I just think that our public money needs to be put into our public education.
I am against putting public money into private schools. We have some great private schools in our area. They do a great job. The only issue that I have is they can choose who goes to their school. If we put kids in there, they may purposely, and I hope they wouldn't, but they may purposely take more kids than they want, and then a couple weeks into the year say, oh no, you're a discipline problem, you have to go out, but they keep the money. And that's the problem. Whereas public schools, we take everybody, we teach everybody, we handle all the issues. So I do not want to see our public money go into private schools, and I would not support that.
Basically going to echo the same thing they've all said. I can't support public money going to private schools. Private schools are great. It's great to have the option. Same with Christian schools, other denominations, etc. That's great. We can have those. But public schools are publicly funded. Private schools are privately funded. If we were flush with education money, maybe that's a different story, but we're struggling to pay for what we already have. We don't need to talk about funding private enterprise at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to fund a private school. I know this year I had about 25 cents per student, and I teach art. So I'm like, okay, you get one pencil to last you all year long. No, just kidding. I bought a lot of stuff, and I was really lucky to be able to go to this place called the Pencil Box. That place is amazing. But I just don't think that it makes sense. And I like the idea of having, I think different people learn differently. So I think it's okay that we have different kinds of schools. And I also agree with what they were saying, that public school is an experience for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are.
Ms. Nixon,
Well,
you're first.
That's a tough question to a degree. But I do know that we have more revenue coming in next year, and we have even more revenue that will hit a year after that. I mean, that's what makes this so hard for every normal person to understand, is how interconnected everything is and how it's all in different stages. And it was really frustrating for me lobbying at the Capitol with them saying, oh no, next year's going to be better. And I'm like, yeah, but how do I believe you? I had to wait that year, and I had to see it for myself. And I don't think anybody can replace that experience. I think that audits are very important, and they are worth finding the money to do. I think that government needs to be transparent and accountable. I think that there are plenty of things that we could make more efficient and easier to understand. I think it's fantastic that the walkout created such an awareness amongst not only teachers but parents and just regular community members in our government. And it's all like we all suddenly realized that we didn't quite learn the things that we needed to prepare us for this and to understand all of the little tiny pieces and parts that go along with it. I think audits should be prioritized. I think that when we prioritize them, that we will find more money.
Yes. First of all, I want to be sure and express my appreciation for the work that Gary Jones's office has done, given the fact that, yes, as you said, the auditor's office has been hit with just brutal cuts, just as many other state agencies have. We're all in this ship together, and when cuts come around, I don't think there's anybody who's been spared. Ultimately, what we're talking about isn't just, I don't think the answer is just moving dollars around from one state agency to another to essentially rob Peter to pay Paul. What we're talking about is having to look for new forms of revenue in total. One of the things I'd like to do is I would like to explore the possibility of, at some point we're going to have to revamp our tax code. We're going to have to look at adapting for the 21st century. We're still using a model that is a commodities-based tax code, and our state has moved to more of a services-based state. So what we're going to have to do isn't just move the dollars over to the audits department. We're going to have to find a way to increase revenue in total.
I think the first thing I'd say is, are you kidding me? We can't afford to pay for an audit. At the city level, we have to audit our financials, and then we have to audit the auditor who audited our financials. So I think that speaks to the problem. We can't even afford to pay an audit. Are you kidding me? How can people be trusting their government to know that their tax dollars are going for what the legislators say it's going to go to? So it's a critical piece of government that has to happen to fund it. Obviously, there are some new revenues coming in, so in the immediate future, you can tap that. I think from a long-term standpoint, you nailed it. I mean, there are some structural issues that hurt not only our school districts, but also our cities. Oklahoma is the only state that really has a wall between sales tax and ad valorem. Cities are funded by 99% sales tax. Schools are funded primarily by ad valorem, and we can't cross. And when there are opportunities to do it, like you saw with higher ed, try to go get a 1% tax increase. We have not raised sales tax in Jenks since 1984. So you add a 1% to go to higher ed on top of what we haven't been able to raise since 1984. I mean, our funding is stagnant. So we got to increase flexibility for cities and schools and give them options. The only way to do that is to do it structurally within the Constitution, change our taxing policy that offers the states, the schools, and the cities to prosper.
That is a tough question, and I don't have a lot of experience there, but I would certainly research and support any options that came about that looks like that would bring in funding to do the audits.
Our state was in a recession. Our country was in a recession, then our state became in a recession a little bit afterwards. We are audited. I know Jenks is audited all the time. I don't think we need to use our money for auditing because we're audited. I know that on the article where they were saying they were auditing for transportation, well, Gary Jones stated they've been audited, but they have had funding taken away from them. It's not about them not being audited. So I don't think it's the fix is auditing and spending more money on auditing just because we have more money. What we need to do is look at the money that is available to help a few and not provide for the most of the state. And that is what I saw when I was in the Capitol, that there were bills that were available that were voted into law that I probably even voted because I heard tax exemption, or you hear raising or reforming taxes. We have to make sure that we're looking and using our money wisely and look at that, and I don't think auditing is necessarily the answer to that.
I would hope that when we come to audit, we would actually find the money to pay for the audit itself. Because there is a lot of misappropriations from what we're being told, just like the transportation that we heard about recently. So that would be my hope. However, I think auditing should be something that every state agency makes a priority. So that should be at the top, and then we work with whatever we find after that to help our other agencies. I do think we need to look for more revenue. We do need to probably look into taxing services instead of just sales taxes, you know, like your doctors and lawyers and things like that. Those are not taxed from what I'm understanding, so we can find more revenue through that if we need to help pay for those audits. But I am in favor of auditing, and I think we need to make that a priority so that we know where all of our tax money is being spent and whether or not it's being spent responsibly.
This just kind of points to the absurdity of where we're at right now. Our auditing department doesn't have the money to audit. We have plenty of issues in terms of finding revenue. Of course, we have issues in maintaining the revenue and seeing where it goes. That's why we need the audits. But it's a great example of everything that's happening in our state. And my feeling about it is if the auditors are suffering, so is everyone else. And so if Oklahoma Healthcare Authority is expected to get by with austerity measures to cut all of their payments, okay, the auditors can do the same thing. They can find a way to make it work if OHCA or the health department or any other state organization can get by. But we do need to find new revenue. Over the past 30 years, Oklahoma has continued to handcuff itself in terms of finding revenue sources because that seems to be the will of the voters. But it's gotten to a point now where we're almost non-functional. We can't pay our own bills. And so we need a change. We need some new revenue source or an improved revenue source.
I think auditing is a must. We need to know where our money's going, where it's been going, and I know when I was really young, they passed the lottery, and that was going to go to education. So that's how they got it to pass, because we were like, woohoo, we're going to get money for education. And so then now they found, I think it was, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was $10 million that the lawmakers ended up having to give back because it wasn't going where it was supposed to go. So I think there's a lot of that, and I think if we just clean it house, get a little organized, I think, I think Oklahoma's going to be the next big thing.
I was really pro audit. Like I wrote a lot of stuff about auditing, and the cool thing about being in the small party that I am, we pretty much know all the candidates in our party. And so I Facebook messaged the Libertarian candidate for state auditor and asked him about it. John is a CPA for like 30 years. He teaches accounting at NSU. He literally teaches the class about government accounting at NSU. And so I said, John, tell me, educate me, I think this is a big deal. And he said, Lee, it's not really a big deal. Apparently, the legislature has passed a bill that will take the 20 largest government agencies and audit 5 of them on a 4-year basis. So audits are happening regularly already. John also informed me that we probably wouldn't find too much because, I don't know, accounting. Really, I was all for it. I thought it would be awesome. But I talked to the guy that I know about it, and he said, not probably going to find too much. So I personally think it's kind of a lost cause.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And I'd like to again thank everyone for being here tonight. Again, as I said, educational success is a tripod. It's got 3 legs. It's got dedicated parents, it's got passionate educators, and it's got motivated students. As I look around, not just the folks here to hear us, but also the panel up here, I see all of those things. And it makes me extremely optimistic for the future of this state. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to every one of you for filing and running with me. This is exciting, and like I said, has me feeling really good about where we're going. So in closing, what I'd like to be sure and leave you all with is this. On June 26th, my Democrat and independent friends have the opportunity to cast a vote for one of 3 candidates. And as you heard tonight, we're pretty much in agreement on many things with regard to education. We all agree that it's a top priority. We all agree that it's time that we do right by our pupils and by our teachers and by our communities. That said, only one of the 3 of us have been endorsed by Oklahoma Education Hall of Famer Lloyd Snow, former superintendent of Sand Springs Schools. And at that, when you look at leadership qualifications, only one of us has been endorsed by Roger Webb, the former president of the University of Central Oklahoma and NSU, as well as former commissioner of public safety for the state of Oklahoma. My name is Michael Ross, and I'm here humbly asking for your vote. With regard to other platform issues, I have a very broad platform. You can find out more at www.ross4ok.com. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being engaged in your communities. That's one thing I found in my years of service to the city of Jenks. I've been on the planning commission for 6 years. I was on the city council for 8 and continue to be. Was mayor from 2013 to 2015. What I find is what makes a great community is great people. So God bless you for showing up here tonight and paying attention and getting involved, because that's what makes great government is great people. We have a great group of people here tonight. I think we all come with a different background and a different skill set. I think that's what makes the legislature such a good opportunity, because it does bring people from all over Oklahoma and those communities. Where we have opportunities to improve, and one of the priorities I will definitely have, it's taken us 15 years to build Main Street. Basically expand a 2.5 mile stretch of road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. 15 years, folks. You know why that is? Because we take funding from the federal government, and they have so many strings attached. We had a 3.5-year environmental study, and it drags on and on and on. We cannot prosper as a city. We cannot prosper as a state. There's been no urgency. There is a lack of trust, and I think this group is going to go up and change that. So would greatly appreciate your vote and support come June 26th, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Let's stay down.
I came in a little late. I had to park way out there. I didn't really hear the first question, so I kind of answered what you already asked. Of course, education is my main focus. I want to try to change things, make a change. That's why I did this. It's mental health and preventative health care. Everyone deserves that. Every citizen of Oklahoma deserves that, as well as I also have a heart for the people that are struggling with drug addiction, and that trickles down to the children. And you know, if we can help the mamas and the daddies do better, then the kids are going to be a lot more successful.
Thank you. That's right.
While I was at the Capitol, I learned a lot. I spoke with many legislators, senators, representatives, Republicans, and Democrats, and I realized that there needed to be a change. There needed to be a change of people working together. And so I decided to try to be a part of that change. I am a child of God. I am a wife of almost 20 years, a mother of 3 children, an educator for almost 15 years. And now I think we need to make sure that we put education as a priority of our state, because education is a key to our future. Besides education, I agree with health care, because we need to make sure that we're taking care of Oklahomans as a whole and not just private parties. And so I hope in June that you vote right for a change, and if you need to, vote right for a change in August and also November. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris.
I'd like to thank the PLAC for hosting this forum and allowing all of us to come out and present our ideas, and thank you everybody for attending and for all of your questions. Some platforms that I do look at as also with education is healthcare, the opioid crisis, transportation. I think if we can, and even crime, if we can fix those things, I think it'll make our state very attractive to businesses wanting to come in. When I first moved to Tulsa, my goal was to graduate high school, leave the state for college, and never look back. That's been over 20 years. I've never left the Tulsa area. I fell in love with the Tulsa area. I fell in love with Oklahoma. I want to see us thrive. I went into education to make a difference in the lives of the children and the students that I teach. I realize now that I can make an even greater impact in their lives and in all of your lives down in the State House as a representative for the state. I want to use a bipartisan effort to come together to do what is best for our state. We need some good answers for some hard questions that we're facing. I have always never opposed to listening to and implementing good ideas, even if they're not my idea. Doesn't matter who it comes from. Let's make it work. I have a friend, Randall Paddock, who's running for Democrat for House 69. He and I go out and campaign together because we realize we're not that far apart. We want what's best for Oklahoma. So I want to work with different parties to come together, make things happen, and let's make Oklahoma the best it can be for future generations, and I would appreciate your vote on June 26th.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
All right, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It means a lot to see people motivated. I want to thank everybody up here for caring enough to make this your life for a while, and possibly for a long time, whoever takes it home. Education is the reason that I finally went over the speed bump and decided I needed to run. I have 2 sons in school. My wife is a former educator. That was really the last straw that made me say, I need to do something. Somebody has to do something. And I had the time and the drive. But that's not the only thing that's important to me. I run a small business. I'm a business manager for a rural health clinic. So I get to see the struggles of small business. I get to see the struggles of health care in our state. We're a cost reimbursed clinic. We are hand to mouth forever. That's just our life. And so we get to see the worst of the worst. Every time our legislature locks down Oklahoma Healthcare Authority, we have no money. It just goes away. And I feel like I'm driven by so many different aspects of what's going on right now in our state. Education is the largest for me right now because it seems to be the largest issue we have. But in general, I'd like to say thank you again to all the other candidates, for everybody coming. I'd like you to consider me when it comes time to vote, ellis2018.com. I'd like to say I'm not just a Democrat or Republican candidate. I want to be District 68's candidate. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chenoweth.
Well, I think right now education needs to be our first priority because it just does. But I think, I really think it starts with a conversation and a dialogue. And so the way I've set up my webpage, I've got kind of like a survey. So I want you guys to go on there and answer questions like, do you need a sidewalk? Do you need a grocery store? Do you need a different restaurant in your neighborhood? I want us to begin to think and to dream big of what we can really become. Because I think, do you feel safe in your neighborhood? I don't. I went and I talked to the fire department in my neighborhood, and I asked them what they needed, and they're like, yeah, we don't have the tools we need. And I think we can do better than what we've been doing. I know we can. I'm hopeful, and I'm proud to be an Oklahoman. And I'm a sap. I'm a sensitive art teacher. But I teach kids, and then I teach Sunday school, and I have a heart of service. And, you know, I mean, that's the way my folks raised me. And I hope that I'll have your support in this next election. I hope you'll check out my webpage, and it's heatherchenoweth.com, and that you'll answer the surveys, because I think we need to start a dialogue of what are our next steps? How do we move forward and really make Oklahoma an amazing place to be? I know we have a bright future.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Every American is half libertarian because every American doesn't like the government to tell them what they can or cannot do. The other half of being a libertarian, though, is making sure the government cannot tell your neighbor what they can or cannot do. I want to correct a little misperception about libertarians. A lot of people think libertarians are do whatever you want, anything goes, but that's simply a lie. Libertarians begin with the moral absolute that hurting other people and their stuff is wrong. People can't do it, and neither should the government. I think this election proves our candidates, like the panel of candidates, proves that every election from here on out is going to be less and less about Democrat versus Republican and about control versus liberty. The other two parties, they tell you two things. You can either have tyranny of the wallet or you can have tyranny of the bedroom. They're essentially two sides of the same coin. But this year you get a third option, a new coin, that's liberty. Liberty of your bedroom and liberty of your wallet. This November, I'd ask you to do what you have never had a chance to do in House District 68, and that is to choose liberty, to choose Lee. Because I have extra time, I'm a licensed therapist. I know a lot about mental health. I know a lot how it controls to gun control, parental rights, and other stuff like that.
Thank you. Ms. Nixon.
Well, I would very much like to echo the sentiments of everybody up here and thank each and every one of you for stepping up and answering the call. It's not easy at all. I ran in our special election for our state senate seat this last year. It was my first run. And it was slightly terrifying, but I learned a lot. And I'm glad that I did it. And I'm glad that my kids saw me do it. I'd like to add a thank you to Representative Mulready for serving this district for as many years as you have, and for, answering all of my crazy questions and being patient with me when I didn't listen to the answers. And I want to say thank you very much and wish you luck on your insurance commissioner race. And the PLAC, thank you guys so much for putting this on. I'm a mom. My agenda is leaving this world better for my kids. I don't care whose idea, I don't care which direction, I don't care, as long as it's what's good for them. And I think at the heart of every person in this room, that's on your mind. Living in West Tulsa, I've had the opportunity to serve on our PTA in our newly consolidated elementary as a neighborhood association president. In my past, I was in the metals industry as a saleswoman and as an efficiency officer. I hope to bring all of that to the table and to revive the history of our area to lead Oklahoma again.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate the candidates sharing their time this evening and their positions.